Katy here, and we're back for a new season of the Bittersweet Life. Thank you to all of you who are financial supporters of this show. We are independent. We have no corporate backing, no government backing, no grant backing. We exist from your kindness. So for those of you who have donated in the past, thank you. For those of you who have yet to donate but you love this show, please consider it. You'll find links in the show notes. We really cannot continue this show without the support of the people who love to listen to it. We hope you enjoyed the look back to the past during the month of August, and now on to brand new episodes as we turn the page into fall and September. Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katy Sewell and Tiffany Parks. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katy Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Tiffany in Rome, Katy in Seattle. And today, Tiffany is in Rome and I am not. But today we're going to examine the phrase, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Or often shortened these days to when in Rome, which I happened to hear on a podcast the other day, and I thought, I think they're using when in Rome incorrectly. The way that they were using it was sort of in the sense of, you know, when in Rome, almost like, well, when in Vegas, whatever stays in Vegas, you know, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. They were using it in that same sort of terminology.
Yes, that's not right.
I don't think that's what it means. But anyway, it sent me down the rabbit hole. Because I was like, well, where did the phrase when in Rome come from? Where did that phrase come from? So obviously, like I just said, the full phrase is when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And of course, it's a phrase that people use all the time, even though they're rarely actually in Rome when they use it. What they're using the phrase most of the time to mean is, you know, when you're visiting a new place, follow the customs and cultures there. Like, do what they would do, you know. Mm-hmm. Is that your understanding of what that phrase means? When in Rome, do as the Romans do?
I think so. Yeah, that's what I would say. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, this is what I learned by going down my internet rabbit hole. Whether or not whoever wrote these articles are correct, I don't know. But this is what I found. That the first printed use of the phrase is in 1777 in a publication that's titled Interesting Letters of Pope Clement XIV, which can't sound more boring. You know, interesting letters from Pope. I
think it sounds fascinating.
Even the addition of the word interesting just doesn't seem to help there. But that is like what they think might be the first printed use of the phrase. However, they think that the phrase is actually thought to have been coined way further back, as far back as 383 AD, when St. Augustine, who originated in Africa, was given a job in Milan. And since many of the Christian rituals were not yet settled on an international basis, he was confused about when he should be fasting if he was to move to Italy. And so apparently, at least according to what I found on the internet, the Bishop Ambrose of Milan gave him the advice, when you're in Rome, live in Roman fashion. When you are elsewhere, live as they live there.
Yes.
Which became shortened as when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
It's all coming back to me, Katy. It's all coming back.
What's coming back?
Well, because when I got married, you'll remember, I made a little booklet for my out-of-town guests, which was the inspiration for the booklet that we make for our guests on our Rome trip.
Yeah.
It's much more thorough and less wedding related. But if you'll remember, I put a bunch of quotes in there. Like, I interspersed quotes about Rome. Mm-hmm. And one of them was probably that quote. And I remember looking it up. And when you said those words in the way that you said them, it rang a bell. Like, yes, now I remember. I do remember, like, studying that and learning that. But I had just forgotten the details of it.
No, but it did raise a question to me, which maybe you know from your historical knowledge, is, you know, he's given this advice by the Bishop of Milan, right? A bishop to Milan.
Remind me the year, please.
It's 383 AD.
Okay.
And so I guess my question was, he's moving to Milan. He's not moving to Rome. So was at that point, was Rome considered like Rome, like we would consider, I don't know, Kleenex, what tissue is? It was like Rome, basically so much a center of Italy that it would be like, well, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Meaning like when in Italy, do as the Italians do. But, maybe you don't know. I was just curious.
It almost, if he's moving away from Rome, it almost sounds like the advice is...
No, he's moving from Africa to Milan.
To Milan.
And this is the advice he's given.
Okay, well, the reason why is because Rome was still an empire at that time.
So that's what I mean. So it would have been considered like Rome is almost like the empire that Milan is incorporated into.
Yeah, it's not almost like that. It is that.
Okay.
Italy was, Rome was not just the city of Rome. Rome was the entire empire, which stretched far and wide until the official end of the empire, until it officially was defunct in the late 5th century. So at that time, even though it was very different from the Roman Empire that we picture in our minds when we think of gladiators and we think of, these debauched parties and, bacchanals and things like that. It was Christian by that point, but it was still an empire. It was still, there still was an emperor, although they were Christian by that point. And so, Milan is a city in the Roman Empire.
Okay, interesting. So, the advice basically is, like we said, it's don't try to stick to all your old habits when you're traveling, because if you do, that's a mistake. Or if you don't know what to do, just look at what the locals are doing. Mm-hmm. That's almost more applies to this guy heading to Milan. Is like, if you don't know what you're doing, just ask what the locals are doing and do that.
Pretty good advice for even our times.
Yeah. Yeah. I think given some of our past discussions, that's what I mean of why I think of it in that larger way of if you try to follow all your old habits while you're traveling, it's a mistake because, you're missing out on the time of experimentation. You're also just finding yourself terribly out of step with the locals.
Yes. And I think that's doubly true when you're an expat or an immigrant, when you move there. It's even more of a mistake because obviously when you're traveling, you're going to miss out on the culture of the place that you're visiting. You're going to miss out on certain aspects of the place. But when you're living there, it's an even bigger loss to not. I'm not saying you have to do everything the locals do. Like if you'd rather drink tea than coffee,
like someone I know,
then go for it. But you do have to adapt.
Yeah,
you do have to adapt.
So what about like that misuse of the phrase where people think when in Rome means, when in Rome, let's go crazy?
I would guess that most people actually do know what it means and that whoever said that was just sadly misinformed. But I think people know. I think people know it.
Is there do you get any sense from like living in Rome after all this time that there's any kind of frivolity that people throw on when they're in Rome? Kind of like, people go to Vegas and now they're on their worst behavior. Mm-hmm. Do you see anything like that when it comes to people visiting Rome?
There's a certain amount of it, but I don't think it's much worse than any other place that you might visit. I think it's just typical tourists behaving badly, and they behave badly all over the place. I don't think that Rome has any particular licentious feel to it. I think other cities like Amsterdam, I think people go crazy in Amsterdam, especially when it was one of the few places in the world where pot was legal.
Yeah.
I think people were kind of, go nuts there. And then there's the whole red light district and all of that. Maybe also in I feel like Barcelona is the city where people go crazy. Mm-hmm. And Rio is gotta be a city where people just go nuts. New Orleans as well. Mm-hmm. I don't think Rome doesn't have that connotation. And I think when people say when in Rome, what they mean is it's like, oh, should we get a second gelato today? When in Rome, it's like, it's an Italian thing to eat gelato. So we got to do it since we're here.
That's true.
I'm on a diet, but I'm going to have pasta because when in Rome.
Mm-hmm, that's true. But would the Italians have a second gelato?
Some might. No, maybe not. But the point is you eat gelato in Rome, like you eat gelato in Italy.
Yes.
It's a common thing after dinner to take your walk, especially in the summer, and have a gelato. And people know that gelato is really good here. So obviously they want to take advantage of that fact.
Right.
I find that phrase is becoming trite. I mean, I get it. I get the use of it, but I feel like people all like overuse it. For example, there are at least 2, and I actually think 3 books in my house that have that title.
Yes. Including our friend Liam Callanan's.
Including our friend Liam Callanan, which I loved his book. And the other 2 books that I have by that title, one of them is actually a guidebook to, it's like an unusual guidebook to the Vatican, I want to say. And then one of them is a collection of short stories, which was so bad that I actually don't have that anymore. I donated that. It was like an expat living in Rome, and it was her short stories. And I honestly don't know how that ever was published, because it was one of the worst things I've ever read. I won't say the name of the author,
but we can look it up because.
But there's also a film. There's also at least one film by that name.
Yeah,
and I want to say it's like either a Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen type deal, and or it could also be. There also might be. I think there was a film made about 15 years ago that like was about a fountain in Rome. It was like a romantic comedy about some fountain, and I remember watching the preview and being very annoyed because this fountain doesn't exist. It was like made up, and like they invented it or it was in a different city or something. But I want to say there's at least 2 movies with that name, but there's probably more. And I don't know. I feel like when those catchphrases, because it's not even a quote anymore. Mm-hmm. It's a catchphrase. When they become overused, they kind of lose their meaning. Mm-hmm. And I don't know.
I guess that's how you end up having people using it, like, when in Rome, let's go insane. You know?
Yeah.
When in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Because when something becomes overused, it loses its meaning.
Mm-hmm. On a totally separate note, when we're talking about tourists being irresponsible, and I meant to ask you about this a while back, and this is an old story now at this point, old-ish story, but here in the U.S., we couldn't help but get the stories about the tourist that got impaled on the fence of the Colosseum.
Oh,
like,
God. I thought you were going to talk about the old man driving down the Spanish Steps.
Oh, well, we could talk about that one too. But that one, he's a local. I mean,
at least he's an old guy. You can kind of like, that's the only thing that saves him, is that he's really old.
Yeah. And he was following a map? Like, well, anyway, I was just wondering about that person that got impaled on the Colosseum fence, which, would be terribly painful. But at the same point, I was wondering, like, how did the locals in Rome talk about stories like that?
They shake their heads.
Because over here, of course, it's like the, bad tourist behavior. We have that story. But, what's the local view?
I think people just shake their heads. Honestly, they've seen, I mean, Rome has seen it all. You know what I'm saying? It has seen it all. It's seen the football hooligans from Britain who, I remember my first years in Rome. Every time they came, they would just terrorize the city, And then, not to go ancient history, but the city has been sacked so many times and has been destroyed and devastated. And tourists do dumb things here, as they probably do everywhere. But maybe here there's more, because there's more tourists here, so there's more dumb things happening here. Somebody was taking a selfie, and this isn't even recent. This is like 20 years ago now. So it's surprising, because now you hear a lot of stories about people taking selfies and dying. Back 15, 20 years ago, it was not as common. And somebody was standing at the tops of the Santa Maria Naracelli church, that has the huge staircase, and they were taking a selfie and fell off the side of the staircase and died. People have been caught, graving their names into the stones of the Colosseum.
Yes. But
that's nothing new, because they were doing that in the 1500s when the Lanzaghenecchi came into Rome during the sack of Rome in 1527. And you can see it in the art in some of the museums.
Yeah.
And people, they sit on ancient like sculptures. I once saw a guy, and I think his daughter, sitting astride one of the lions at the fountain in Piazza del Popolo, like where the obelisk is. There's like these 4 ancient lions. And I will say that, I remember being a tourist, and I did, I've been a not perfect tourist as well. And when you go to a city like Rome, you don't, especially if you're either really young or really inexperienced traveling to European cities especially, you might think, oh, look at these cool lion statues. They're a couple hundred years old.
Yeah.
Maybe they're 100 years old. You don't think, well, no, this is Rome. Those lions are 2,000 years old. Because in so many other parts of the world, anything of that age and in that condition would be locked away in a museum. And we just have it on the street, So that's the only sort of way I can try to excuse it. But I said something to him. I was like, that's 2,000 years old. Like, would you do that to something that was that old in your city? You know, I kind of shamed him a little bit. But yeah, you get it all here. And I think the locals they just are used to it.
So would you say that the when in Rome, being that it is, we now know that its origin is in 383 AD. I mean, it's hard to equate it with the phrase the Dolce Vita, but would you say the Dolce Vita is equally as overused now as the when in Rome phrase? I know they're slightly different in how they're used.
The Dolce Vita is also very, very overused, but it's not as easy to just like throw off in a conversation, because it's so easy to say when in Rome, it's like it needs no other words. It's just that's a perfect, it's an encapsulation. The Dolce Vita is more of it's more of a vibe, It's more of like an adjective than an expression.
But see, even like when you say that when in Rome, the first thing I think of is like, I can do whatever I want.
Really?
Like, I don't know why. It just sort of has that feeling, and maybe it's that kind of like, I'm getting away with eating pizza for dinner every night. That's what the Romans do. And you are totally getting away with it because that is what the Romans are doing.
Well,
sometimes. They're probably not eating it every night. But it does have that. I mean, I can see why people mess it up and think that it's like a guilty pleasure statement, Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to have another piece of the cheesecake, but when in Rome, I mean, that's a misuse of the statement, but...
It's misuse. I don't even think I've ever noticed that use of it before for me, or I've interpreted it wrong. I've interpreted it in the correct way, because to me, when in Rome, wherever you are, you might be in New York and you say when in Rome, meaning when in New York, because that's the phrase. It's like, I'm going to do what they do here. Mm-hmm. That's how I've always interpreted it.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I'm going to go, here I am. I'm from this tiny little town in the middle of the countryside where, we've got more horses than people, but I'm going to hail a cab in New York because when in Rome, that's how I interpret it.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to do this thing that's totally out of character for me, like hailing a cab on Times Square because I'm in the place where you do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. And in this case, like Rome is standing in for the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think it can stand in for anywhere.
Yeah, which of course it did stand in for the rest of the world when it was that giant empire to a certain degree. It was like so empire-centric at that time that whether or not they were aware of the entire globe at every moment like we are, they would have felt like they were the center of the universe. Or is that true to how their self-perception was at that point?
The center of the universe?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They felt like they were the center of the universe, if not the whole universe.
Nothing else mattered at that point.
Yeah. I mean, if you weren't from Rome, you were a barbarian, like literally.
Yeah. Is there another phrase that you know of that maybe not as old as 383,
yes,
but that people still use on the common today?
Yes. And I can think of two right off the top of my head that we all constantly use. And one of them is, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We say that all the time.
Yeah.
People just say that. And I don't know. I mean, you're the master of looking things up, but I don't know who was the first person to say that.
Do you want me to look it up?
If you want. Maybe we don't know. But that's a pretty good one because it's true, first of all. Mm-hmm. And it's a good thing to keep in mind when you're in a city like Rome, because a lot of times you think, oh my gosh, all this stuff is X numbers of years old. And it's like, well, no, it's all on a gradient.
What's the other one while I look up the origin of Rome wasn't built in a day?
The other one is all roads lead to Rome. And that has a very, very specific reason for it. In the time of ancient Rome, Rome was by far the most important city in the Western world. And the Romans were building roads that would lead to their provinces. So, they're conquering northern Italy. Eventually, they're conquering much further north than that. They're conquering southern Italy. And so they're building roads that are stretching out like a radial or radius. They're each one is going straight north, one is going south, one is going east, one is going west, one is going southwest, one is going northwest. And if you looked at a map in ancient Rome, every major road led to Rome. It was literally a fact. There were no roads, no big, what a Roman would consider a road, a consular road like the Via Appia or the Via Flaminia or the Via Aurelia. They all led to Rome.
There you go. This one, unfortunately, the origin of Rome wasn't built in a day, has so much French involved. And my French pronunciation is... Okay, Rome, this is according to Wikipedia, which is not the source I would usually use, but I'm doing it in a pinch. Rome wasn't built in a day is an adage attesting to the need for time to create a great thing. Right, of course. Mm-hmm. It is the usual English translation of a medieval French phrase. Should I type it into this and you can pronounce it for us?
Ne fut pas faite tout en un jour.
Which means what? Rome wasn't built in a day.
I didn't say the first word. Rome. Rome ne fut pas faite tout en un jour. Rome was not made all in a day.
Yes, and so that came from a collection of poetry from 1190, which was titled this, which I've just sent you.
Le proverbe au vilain. Is it le or la? Because you wrote li, and li does not exist in French as an article.
I mean, that is what is in this article.
Well, it may be medieval French then, but that's the only thing I can think of that it's medieval French, because I've never seen li as a French article. But I don't know medieval French, so could be.
You don't?
The proverb of vilain. Whoever vilain is, I don't know.
Okay, so it's from a French poetry collection titled that from 1190, apparently.
Okay.
So
interesting.
I mean, I don't know if that was a mega hit or something, or why we still know that today, but
it must have caught on. You never know what's going to catch on.
I know. Is there anything we've ever said that you think could catch on?
Go look at the birds.
Go see what the birds are doing.
Go see what the birds are doing. I even misquoted our own catchphrase there. You better cut that out.
Go see what the birds are doing.
So, Katy, to end, I am going to prepare for you off the top of my head with no notes. Well, I might have to look some of this up. A flash quiz on famous or not so famous quotes about Rome. And you are going to tell me who said it.
Oh, gosh. Okay, I'll try.
I'll try not to do the super impossible ones. I'll try to think of ones that I know you at least at one time knew.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Okay, here's one. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so let's see. Rome took all the vanity out of me. After seeing the wonders there, I gave up all my foolish hopes in despair.
I would think that is Louisa May Alcott.
It is. It is.
Yes.
I knew that you knew that one. So,
yes.
Yeah. And I read that recently, and I was surprised to find that, contrary to what I had remembered, Joe did not say that. Amy said that. And Amy, in fact, was the artist. She was the aspiring artist. Joe was the writer. So that makes sense.
It's interesting, though, because I always assumed that was something that Louisa May Alcott herself said. I didn't realize it was from Little Women.
It's from Little Women, and she wrote it before she had even been to Rome. Louisa May Alcott came to Rome when she was in Rome when she was writing Little Men, maybe, and while she was writing Joe's Boys, perhaps. One of those two. And she was not that impressed with Rome, actually. She was not. She was like, I need the countryside. I'm a country girl. I want the country.
Oh, okay. So, I like it. That might have been the entirety of my knowledge of who made quotes about Rome, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna do something that you might be able to guess it out of context.
Okay.
Just the context. Okay. Only from Rome can I write about Russia. Only there does it stand before me in all its immensity.
I mean, it's got to be a Russian writer, right?
It's a Russian writer.
So, like, how many could it be? I'm blanking right now on who wrote Anna Karenina, but
It's not Tolstoy. It's
Okay.
it's the Russian artist who was obsessed with Rome, who madly fell in love with Rome, and also said, and this I will paraphrase because I don't remember the exact words. He said something like, if I was to be given a million, whatever, a million. He doesn't say what currency, and then multiplied by 3 more millions and multiply that by 10 more millions. And on the condition of this, I would have to leave Rome for 6 months. I would say no.
jeez.
Yeah, he loved Rome.
Boy, I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's Nikolai Gogol.
Oh, okay. Okay, that would have been hard for me to pull that one out.
Yeah, it's you have to kind of know Rome. You have to kind of know like who were the writers who lived in Rome. Mm-hmm. So here's one. This isn't exactly a quote about Rome, but it is about Rome. And you might be able to get this from context too if you know anything about him. We hate Rome.
We hate Rome. I don't know.
It's a famous writer who was in Rome with his wife on their honeymoon and came another time and happened to be there during the Jubilee year of 1925.
Oh.
Exactly 100 years ago.
Hemingway?
It was Fitzgerald.
Oh,
F. Scott Fitzgerald. Famously hated Rome.
Now that you've said that, I'm like, I remember that about Fitzgerald. I had forgotten that, though.
Yeah, Fitzgerald got into a fight. He got beat up, basically, really badly near the Spanish Steps, near the top of the Spanish Steps.
Well, that would color it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he never would speak of it. He would just call it that horrible thing that happened to me in Rome. That's how he referred to it. Like he would never talk. But if you ever have read Tender as the Night, he puts it in there. It's in there. It happens to one of his characters in that book. So, okay, this one you should know. This is probably one of the most famous, at least literary quotes. Yes, I have finally arrived, this capital of the world. I now see all the dreams of my youth coming to life.
Wow. I love the drama in all of these quotes. They're also like, I hate it, I love it.
Yeah.
I will die without it. I would rather die than have your money to leave it. Yeah. Let's see. Can you give me an era? I think it's highly unlikely that I'll get this.
18th century.
So I'm thinking, it reminds me of the flavor and feeling of the poets of the Romantic period. So
it's a similar flavor, a little earlier. Similar, a little earlier.
I don't know. Hans Christian Andersen.
No, it's Goethe.
Okay. I should have said Goethe because that actually went in my head. And then I was like, but wait, when was Goethe there? And I second guessed myself. But yeah, okay.
He's one of the classic guys who lived there. Let's see if I can find one more that
So I'm like basically failing at this quiz. I got one and then no other
It's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah, if you were quizzing me on like commercial slogans, I'd probably be doing better.
This is such a good quote, and hardly anybody knows this. So I'm not expecting you or putting any pressure on you because this is a quote that I only discovered recently when I was preparing my literary Rome audio tour for Voice Map, and it's such a great quote. But like I said, it's not well known. Rome reminds me of a man who lives by exhibiting to travelers his grandmother's corpse.
Boy, that's a weird concept. Wait, say that one more time.
Rome reminds me of a man who lives by exhibiting to travelers his grandmother's corpse.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had to hear that one more time to really visualize it. Oh my gosh. Where can you give me an era again and I'll take a stab in the dark?
Same early 1900s.
Maybe Mark Twain?
No, but that's a good guess actually. And I think that he was also not super impressed by Rome. This is James Joyce.
Oh, okay.
James Joyce also did not like Rome, not because he didn't like the city, but because he had a horrible, horrible time there. Worse than Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald was only in Rome on vacation, but Joyce actually lived there and was pretty miserable. So yeah, I just love that. Okay, I said that was the last one, but I'm going to do one more because I actually know that you know this one.
Okay.
Oh, Rome, my country, city of the soul.
Yeah.
I know you know this because we put it in our book, our little guidebook that we give our people
on
our Rome trip. You know this. These are your romantics. It's one of your romantics, okay?
It's got to be Byron.
It's Byron, yes.
Yeah.
You got one. No, you got two because you got the Louisa May Alcott quote.
Right. So I got 2 out of 6 or whatever that was. But that's not terrible.
That's not terrible because those were hard questions.
Those were hard questions. And I mean, that should have been Mark Twain. I mean, I'll give it to James Joyce since he's the one that said it, but that does sound like something Mark Twain would have said.
It totally does.
Absolutely. I'll have to give it to the man that actually said it, but yeah. All right. Well, when in Rome, just kidding. It's so strange when you're using it in another city. But yeah, I'm like trying to think like what it would have to do, because it's summer here in Seattle. It's beautiful right now. There's been a rabbit explosion. There are rabbits everywhere in my neighborhood. So, I mean, I guess I could say something like, well, I'll talk to you later, Tiffany. I'm going to go take a walk amongst the rabbits because one in Rome.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't
I'm
really...
not sure if that really captures it.
All right. Well, let's just go see what the birds are doing.
Okay. That sounds good.
We'll go with the old quote from us, and we will leave it there. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katy Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Join us again. Bye.
If you love the show, help spread the word to others by giving us a quick 5-star review wherever you listen. We love reading your comments and compliments. They are like fuel to the work. Thanks for taking the time.